this is a powerful energy in this parsha that is really a tool to help us navigate life, not in its simplicity, not when it's painless and uncomplicated, but to the contrary, when it is almost defined by its complexity. And in that sense, Jacob was the patriarch who embodied the notion of struggle, who was the inspirational figure who understood the dark side of human nature, having experienced it firsthand, having experienced the potential of a fratricide, of a family that was fractured and filled with animosity and deceit and envy and he perhaps pioneered, or I shouldn't say pioneered because it sounds as if it's something wonderful, even though it's just part of life. He was the first Jew, he was the paradigm of the diaspora Jew, in that he embodied the notion of having to leave a certain place and finding safety, finding a safe haven. But the other side of the quality and the characteristic of the diaspora Jew is not necessarily a Jewish thing. It's a universal idea of the search for meaning, the search for purpose. And Jacob embodies that as well. His running away from his home is another cycle of Abraham leaving his home, a continuation of that journey, and the beginning of a search for God. That was not just a God that was a private Abraham God, but one that could end up becoming the God of Israel and to truly be the covenantal God of an entire people. And in order for that to happen, there has to be an extraction from a place of a dire straits place, and a journey happens. And so we take strength from this for our personal journeys. Something very beautiful, just to skip to the end of the portion, fast forwarding all of Jacob's experiences with Rachel and Leah and Lavan and the way he prospers is he comes full circle in the end of the portion. He wants to go back to Israel. He wants to run away from Lavan. He doesn't like the lifestyle there. He looked adversity in the face, and he faced it down. He didn't shy away from it. But he wants to go back to a place of tranquility. He wants to go back to his roots. He wants to go back home. Everybody wants to go back home. It's built into our DNA. We all find ourselves balancing the need to forge a new path, to conquer our fears and to broaden our horizons, and in doing so, enrich our lives immeasurably. And at the same time, we all want to go back home to a place of familiarity, to a place that is just calm and predictable and accessible all the time to us. And this is the end of the portion where this is where Jacob is moving, and this is perhaps where he begins to face the biggest adversity yet. And the desire to go back home is oftentimes confused with the end of the road. But for many people, going back home to the place of comfort, to the place of deep connection, is fraught with even more turbulence and complexity than one could imagine, more so even than running away from home. So there's a push to go back to roots, but it's not a place of cowardice. Oftentimes, the impulse to go back to where we came from is in itself the most courageous step that we can take, because coming full circle means filling in that one place in our lives that it's blank. There's a blank, there's a question mark. And typically, a lot of those question marks are associated with more the starting part of our lives than the thick of it. It's more like the slave, the freed slave of Egypt, many, many years later, circling back to Egypt to kind of close the loop. And, there's a Jewish law associated with that. It says you can't go back to Egypt except for pragmatia, except for business, because you're not supposed to go back to a place of a trauma. You're not supposed to go back to a place of enslavement willingly and consciously. And yet, there's this interesting law that says you should go back. You should go back to Egypt if you have an ability to make a deal, do some kind of a business deal. But what does it mean existentially? It means if you can profit from it spiritually, emotionally, if somehow something that's locked up in you, that is a deep part of you, that is like a central piece of what makes you, is still locked up somewhere in a catacomb in Egypt, in some kind of a tomb, you got to go back, because it's you. You're essentially forfeiting something big of who you are. You've let it become the property of somebody else. And what that law that says you're allowed to go back to Egypt says, it's like you have to go reclaim your property. You have to pull your energy, withdraw your energy back from wherever it has been kind of expropriated in a negative way. And so, in a weird, inverse sense, before the exile is even happening, Jacob is acting out that drama on a miniature, micro level. He's going through the entire cycle of fleeing from some place and freeing himself from it, and then circling back to it and appreciating it from an entirely different perspective, from a place of strength. And in this case, he's facing his demons of his childhood. He's facing Esav. And he doesn't need to do it. But he knows that he will never rest until he feels like he's achieved some kind of a personal redemption and figured out the thing that's challenging him the most. There's a saying, there's gold in them hills. Oftentimes, the places where we have our most negative reaction, the places where the largest amount of our fear is concentrated, is typically a meter that is signaling the place of our greatest soulfulness. Like, those people who walk on the beach with those electric sticks, and when looking for treasure, and it starts to beep, buzz, and then they start digging in the sand over there, and they find the place, whatever it is. So that's what's happening over here. Whether it's Jacob going back to meet Esav, whether it's a slave circling back in the aftermath of their freedom to the place where they were originally enslaved, to fully come to terms and unravel the trauma, the accumulated trauma that is still there, that's unresolved. That is a true freedom. That's a deeper freedom than a superficial freedom. The superficial freedom gives us the physical freedom. We're free to move about. But there's something inside of our head, in our heart, that accompanies us wherever we go. And emotional freedom is not something that we can escape from geographically. And oftentimes people make the mistake, if I just move here, the grass is always greener on the other side, if I just did this, or I had this, or I went there, then the voices in my head would stop tormenting me. And, you can run, but you can't hide. And Jacob knows this. And he knows that he has to face his demons if he is serious about being the father of the Jewish people, about being the father of a nation that will also encounter Esavs, will also encounter pharaohs, will encounter the pharaohs and the Esavs that live inside of us, that just live there. They're there. And he wants to send the right message. He wants to wire us as a nation with a courageousness to confront. And that's where the end of the portion kind of leaves us. And we see it leaves us with a very touching encounter between Lavan, who is typically portrayed as a rascal, and Lavan and Yaakov and the family are reconciled. His father-in-law did some really kind of nasty things to him, but everyone is kind of reconciled to the relationship will not be perfect, but we can leave on good terms. And Lavan kissed his children, his grandchildren. It tells us this, right? Mm-hmm. That Lavan kisses them goodbye. It's a very touching moment where this person who's been nothing but harmful, a soft side comes out, and he kisses them. And Kabbalah looks at it and says that every Torah story has some kind of a spiritual, Kabbalistic energy paradigm and a higher realm. And so Lavan is the Hebrew word Lavan also means white. And white is purity and spirituality and simplicity. And that's the Kabbalah energy that's coming out over here in the morning. It's a morning time. Mm-hmm. And this spiritual energy that is a spiritual energy that's not something that we feel consciously it's something that is very transcendent. It's a very large emotion, let's just say. It's not something that we can carry regularly through the day. But we can experience it briefly in the morning, meaning before we descend into the complexity, into the labyrinthian complexities of a given day. And in this case, it's before Jacob is going to encounter Esav. And so he gets that, the whole family gets that kiss from Lavan. They get that kiss of grace. And it's Kabbalistically, it's a kiss from God.
From Zayden.
Yeah, from God, from the holiness, and it's a sense of being deeply connected. It's a sense of going back to the Garden of Eden, before, in anticipation of a deep separation that's going to be coming up, is a strong opposite movement of connectedness, of deep oneness, that in all of the person's disparate sides kind of are wrapped up into this kiss, and a kiss is a symbol for a deep, serious connection. You know, when you talk to a person, it's one level of connection. When you hug a person, it's another level of connection. But when you give a person a kiss, that means that you're connected deeply with this person, and that you're serious about the relationship, about the quality of the connectedness, and you want this to be real. And so that's the idea of Jewish idea of prayer in the morning, is that kiss, is that lovan, that whiteness, that simplicity, that purity. Vayashkem Avram baboker. Abraham gets up in the morning. He saddles his donkey. What does that mean? The donkey also is a metaphor for materialism, the material of life, chomer, the stuff of life. Mm-hmm. And he saddles that basically. He basically shuts down the ego before it even has a chance to surface, and he prays. And he goes to that place where he can be embraced by God. And then he's filled with energy. It says, "V'Yakov halach l'darka." He can go and confront whatever it is that haunts him, he can do so courageously and triumphantly and hopefully and with conviction and with powered by that soul energy of that kiss, of that connectedness, knowing that there's like, you're walking out of the Garden of Eden, but you're still connected there in some way, like some long extension cord, like umbilical cord extension to God that says, even though you walked away from the Garden of Eden, you're still in the Garden of Eden wherever you are. And so Vayetze Yaakov Miber Shava is really the headquarters of leaving, but also knowing that we don't leave, that if we practice a sense of mindfulness, that we don't leave, but we take everything that we need with us. And so there's no real Vayetze if we're cognizant of Einoid Muvade, that there's a presence of God in the world that we cannot be detached from. So Yom Tov, let's find courage to leave where we need to leave and go where we need to go and face what we need to face. And surely in the month of Kislev is the month of Nisim, of light, of miracles. So we'll be able to discover, if we look at all the right places and uncover all the wells and dig deep enough, we can find the water, we can find the light, and we can find the resolution and the peace that is a deep and profound peace, since it's come not by escaping from what we need to confront, but by processing it in a responsible way. Yom Tov. Have a great day, everybody.